Welcome to Clarity, a podcast powered by the Thomson Reuters Institute. I'm Zach Warren, the Institute's Technology and Innovation Insights lead. In each episode, we dive deep into a single question from decision makers and thought leaders from legal, corporate, tax accounting and audit, and government communities. In today's episode, we discuss the big question: how can technology and strategic approaches help businesses navigate the impact of tariffs? In a past episode of this podcast, we discussed the impact of tariffs on the tax accounting and audit industry, what they are, where they're going, and what the future holds. But with all of that comes a natural next question: what can you do about it? Responding to tariff changes requires decisive action, constant communication, and above all else, processes and procedures that allow professionals to keep up with the rapidly changing landscape. And it's in there that technology will play a crucial role into the future. In this second podcast examining the impact of tariffs, Will Strickland, client partner in Thomson Reuters Corporate Solutions Consulting Group, sits down with two experts to discuss the tariff strategy of the future. Ryan Bialas, Director of Global Trade Compliance with Thermo Fisher Scientific, and Jenifer Fernandez, Director of Product Management with Thomson Reuters Corporate Tax and Trade Team. Take it away.
Hello, and welcome to episode 2 of our Global Trade podcast. My name is Will Strickland, and I'm a manager within our client services group that is tasked with aiding customers as they navigate the world of trade compliance. In today's episode, we're diving into how technology tools and innovative strategies are helping businesses mitigate and in some cases avoid the impacts of tariffs in the ever-changing landscape of global trade. Join me as we explore the systems, benefits, challenges, and key considerations that companies face when navigating these complex waters. First, I'd like to introduce you to our guest for the second podcast in our series on tariffs. Ryan Bialas is here from Thermo Fisher. Ryan is a director of global trade compliance there, and Thermo Fisher is a Fortune 100 biotech, pharmaceutical, and healthcare company. Ryan is also a longstanding member of the Thomson Reuters Client Advisory Board. Also, we have Jenifer Fernandez. She is a director of product management at Thomson Reuters, specializing in our import and export products. However, she also has extensive expertise in many other global trade management solutions. In today's demanding and competitive business landscape, managing global trade effectively and efficiently is critical. To add further complexity to this challenge, the current Trump administration is approaching tariffs and trade compliance from a new perspective, in which regulations are changing daily. Recently, Ray Grove, the head of product management at Thomson Reuters, published an article in Supply Chain Brain titled "How a Strong Offense is the Best Defense in a Global Trade War." In this article, he talks about striving for enhanced visibility into current and potential tariffs is paramount. He talks about the challenges of obtaining real compliance guidance on rapidly changing policies. Finally, Ray observes that companies are being forced to quickly and opportunistically shift long-standing supply chains and pivot into new markets. Ryan, first I'd like to start with you. When considering the three themes that Ray identifies as critical for companies to keep top of mind, what stands out to you? Do you have any advice for companies that are looking to gain answers to these challenges?
Yes. So I think that all three are actually critical, and all three are really what every organization is dealing with. For me, the number one thing is enhanced visibility. So historically, I think a lot of organizations are just used to using ACE or any other general customs agency reports, and those are a great start. But for everything that is happening, we need detailed visibility into all of our global import and export data. And we don't need it by the tariff code. We need that down to the SKU, because that's how decisions will be made. So having that information to the SKU, that allows us to really make strategic decisions, and totally dependent on, we can make those decisions on what's potential and what's actual. So that visibility is number one. Guidance too, also a massive challenge. So I think we're blessed here at Thermo Fisher. We have a very strong commitment to global trade compliance. We also have a very large, knowledgeable, and experienced staff. So that is an incredible benefit. But for us, we also hold regular meetings. And honestly, they feel like they're constant. It seems like every day, all day. It's the same meetings over and over again. But they are with our GTC staff, finance, sourcing, supply chain, and government relations. And again, talking about what's being proposed, what's actual, what are we doing? And then at that point, too, we're also able to look at the data. We can take snapshots. We can see where we're at. We can see what's coming in. And the best part about that is within these meetings, we can take a look at that data. We can talk about the strategies. But what that does is it gives the business GTC or the business sourcing, it gives them the ammunition basically to go back to make sound decisions for that business. Because even in any organization, you've got multiple businesses within that organization, different supply chains, different product lines. So every decision you make has to be very specific to the need for that. So, and then with that too, with just trying to stay up on top of things, we utilize partners, including U.S. Customs, other customs agencies, obviously counsel, brokers, even TR to a point, asking them what their opinions on things. So if we just cast as wide of net as possible. For the last, though, being forced to make quick changes, again, I think it comes down to the data and communication. With us just being able to give the right information to the business leaders, and then they can make their sound decisions based off of short-term and long-term solutions.
And I think rightfully so, you noted the benefit in in some cases, evidently not at Thermo Fisher, the lack of resources and kind of attention to some of these new challenges. I think there are a lot of clients and organizations that are learning that maybe they've neglected some of the resourcing needed to support this environment currently. And it's something that I think is becoming evident with certain folks, and we'll explore that a little bit later. But before we do so, Jenifer, I'm curious about your thoughts on this. I know you talk to importers and exporters all the time. Where are they struggling the most?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think that Ryan kind of hit the nail on the head. Things are changing all the time. We know, before the start of the year, we kind of knew that tariffs were going to be a hot topic and, we'd have to keep an ear out for what was going to happen there. But I don't know of anybody that kind of knew exactly what we were in for over the past couple of months, since February when the IEEPA tariffs went into effect. It's kind of just been, every week there's something new that you have to keep track of. And I want to impress on people who do not necessarily have the deep knowledge like Ryan or the other folks that I talk to in global trade. It's not just a matter of understanding, okay, now I need to pay more tariffs for, these certain goods that I'm importing. There are other requirements above and beyond that, for steel and aluminium, for example. You're having to report your countries of smelt and cast or melt and pour. Now, the impacts that we've had over the past couple of months have kind of expanded that reporting to companies and importers who have never had to deal with that reporting before. You have to go figure out, where do I get that information from? I have to go talk to my suppliers. First you have to understand, right, that you have to do that. That's now a requirement when you're importing those goods. Then you have to figure out how I'm going to actually get the information, make sure that it's accurate, and ultimately report it back up to US Customs when I'm importing those goods. So it's above and beyond really paying more duties. It's understanding exactly what you need to be doing along with these new requirements, what you need to be reporting. There are additional codes that you have to report as you're reporting your additional tariffs. You have to understand when those are applicable, when they're not applicable. We've kind of seen the tariffs go on, off again, right? It's hard to keep up with that. It is a full-time job, honestly, for somebody to keep abreast of the news and be understanding how that's going to impact your business. And not only in the now, I think what Ryan pointed out really well was you're also forecasting, right? You're a business. You have to have some kind of idea of what your future is going to look like. And it's incredibly hard right now when you're not really sure what tomorrow is going to bring. So I don't think that we've seen a period in global trade that's been quite as disruptive as the past couple of months. And truly, folks are just struggling to understand and keep up and make sure that, they're trying to look forward for their business. Where are we going in the future? Kind of being able to make a good decision there on what they should do without really the full understanding of where things could be going.
And Jenifer, I'm going to stick with you with a follow-up question, but I think it's important insight into the initial thought process can just be, well, what are the tariffs, right? What is the regulatory information that's changing, but also um, importers and exporters and all sorts of businesses are really being challenged to gain information, to collect information about their own business, about their own manufacturing processes, and their own data is necessary to support this. So it's not just what is the tariff rate today versus tomorrow versus last week. It is how is this product made? Where are we getting the components from? Where are we shipping it to? And the clients that I talk to that, Ryan's experience, but I also know the clients you talk to, they're not just dealing in one product or one simple process or sharing or selling these goods or buying goods from one supplier or one country. These are massive multinational businesses, and collecting this information, knowing where to look, knowing what information to collect is supremely challenging. So a question that I do have for you, Jenifer, is um, how can companies, use technology to actually remain agile? Have you seen people be able to successfully navigate this better than others, and how are they?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that one thing that we've kind of all learned with all the changes over the past few months is a technology solution or automation, visibility into your data is no longer really a nice to have. It's really a necessity if you want to get ahead and keep your business moving. Because, like Ryan said, and I'm sure you guys source lots of different products from lots of different people, as most importers do. Being able to have that true supply chain visibility back to the source to understand where am I getting this from, how will the tariffs impact this? If I do need to report that additional information, how can I get it? It's not easy to do if you don't have a data solution in place where you can see everything all in one, right? You can understand all your products, the breadth of your supply chain. And then two, leveraging technology, not just to have that visibility, but to be able to make um, the strategic decisions about your business that may actually give you a strategic advantage in an environment like this. I'm definitely seeing folks with very well designed automated technology solutions kind of do have an upper hand, right? You can see everything. You can leverage different trade tools that you may have at your disposal, such as free trade agreements, right? We have special programs such as foreign trade zones, can provide some sheltering, of some of the tariffs as they go into effect, out of effect. If you have a trade tool that provides you the flexibility into being able to leverage and see and play what if, right? What if I change my sourcing? Can I go source from somebody else? I'm sourcing this good from China today. Maybe it was back when we had the 125% tariff or 145% tariff. What does it look like? Can I find a supplier elsewhere? Can I quickly pivot and make that change? It's about operational flexibility as well as being able to, have the understanding of what your supply chain looks like in order to make those changes. If you don't have that good visibility, you don't have a good way to kind of store all your data or leverage the technology in that manner, then it's probably very difficult to really understand A, what the impact is, and then B, what you should do about that impact. So definitely, I think that technology is really becoming very, very critical, whereas previously, it may have been a little bit more of a nice to have.
And I think that, we'll explore this here shortly. I think that's where you look at the difference in large versus smaller businesses, and realize that everybody needs what you just described, but not everybody necessarily has the resources to put that kind of upfront investment to gain benefit that is most cases a little bit further down the road. And Ryan, just to ask you some questions on this topic. As a company that I know utilizes technology heavily to manage the world of trade compliance. Whenever you kind of go a step further past that and you consider evaluations to figure out what works and what doesn't, how do you actually measure the success or areas that you need to improve upon from a kind of tariff mitigation perspective?
Well, that's another hot topic. So outside of technology, expanding it, getting more detailed information, the next part of that is the measuring, right? Our ROIs, where we're at, what we need to do. It has been, I think we all know what we want, right? I think I know what we all know what we want to see, but getting that data and being able to present it is still difficult, even with solutions, right? So right now, it's we have our set KPIs, we have our set metrics, and we have certain things that we're looking for. Specifically, you talked about it, Will. I think you said data integrity. So data integrity, one of it is trying to figure out how good our data actually is just in our source systems, our ERPs, things like that. So that is one thing that we're looking at. And then we expand it out. So then we start looking at the specific tools. So what I'm going to give you guys a plug here. So we use global trade visibility and entry verification, and we are expanding the use of that. It's been instrumental because then we can see differences of, we entered this part under X amount of tariff codes over the last year of other different countries of origin, or we're sourcing it from here to there. I can see where it's going around the world. So it's a matter of now it's meshing everything together and all those KPIs and metrics. The other piece of it is too, we have all of these KPIs and metrics. Not everybody wants to see them all. So again, I listed out all those different functions in my earlier. So what's important to who is also important because we have all these meetings, nobody has time for them. So if I want to talk about valuation for one thing, you know what? Sourcing probably doesn't care about valuation. They don't need to see any metrics there, but tax and finance do. So again, it's also tailoring those KPIs, those metrics to the right audience. And we're learning as we go through here. So every meeting you have, it's like, oh, can we see it like this? What about that? It's coming, that type of thing.
Aside from the plug for the Thomson Reuters Global Trade Visibility tool, you also teed me up perfectly for my next question. So maybe you should host, Ryan. But the question is for Jenifer, but I'll give my perspective on it as well because we're talking about all this technology and implementing it is easier said than done, right? There's hurdles and it is a change for businesses. And what I have seen, and it's something you touched on, Ryan, is challenges around getting the data into the place that it needs to be, a global trade automated system, and having that data be of good quality. That is, in talking to clients, one of the biggest challenges that they face when it actually comes to automating this type of system. So Jenifer, I'm curious, as somebody who has been a part of the implementation world, been a part of the product world, if you get to the point where you get past all the other hurdles and you're ready to implement a new technology, kind of that new shiny technology that's going to help a lot, with automating these processes, what are some hurdles and challenges that you see clients facing as they kind of go on this journey?
Another great question. I always, the number one thing that I recommend to folks as you're looking to implement a new technology solution is to make sure that you have everybody that is impacted, all the relevant stakeholders involved from the very beginning. I've been involved in implementations where we get towards the end, right, and we've designed out the entire solution. Then we bring in a team that potentially we didn't kind of talk to earlier and learn something new, right, that changes the workflow. So it's really important if you're rolling out a solution that folks are going to be impacted by, whether they're directly using it or not, they have some kind of feed in, feed out of that solution. Somebody from each department needs to be involved in providing feedback on the design before you get to the end phase. I think that's something that's really easily kind of forgotten. And, I use it. I'm a product manager here at Thomson Reuters, and user feedback is one of the most critical things that we can get, right? I could think this is how, I would expect a user to use a solution or use a function within the software. But there are often things that I don't think about that I could go to Ryan, and he would say, well, hey, have you thought about this? This is what our business does. It's so important to understand how different folks with different roles will use a system. That is my number one piece of advice to folks. Make sure that you're getting feedback early. You're thinking about all the people that are going to use it, get those stakeholders involved. There's obviously data integrity, right? Making sure that you have clean data, making sure that you can kind of consolidate, pull everything in. But really having those stakeholders engaged, feeling like they have ownership in the process too, is very helpful, especially at the end when you have to get the buy-in. Folks have to start using the system. It's really, really very critical.
Yeah, and thanks for that. And it makes me think, and I've teased the topic a little bit, and Ryan, obviously we've established Thermo Fisher is one of the largest companies in the world, but if we think about this challenge in the context of large versus small businesses, I know you've worked in trade compliance for numerous different companies that vary in size and kind of buy-in. How can potentially some of the smaller businesses, in your opinion, that are still very impacted by these tariff changes? In some cases, they don't have the margins or the capital to withstand some of the impact, so they have to figure out a way to withstand the current situation. Do you have any kind of advice or thoughts or just any kind of general sentiments that you can share around ways that maybe smaller businesses can still operate compliantly and in a way that minimizes tariff impact?
Yeah. So obviously, it's great having budgets and being able to afford and get all the technology and solutions, but everything still is, honestly, it's still a process, right? It's still looking at your data, it's still understanding what you're importing and exporting. So that is still number one. Like, you need, that is necessity now. We said it earlier. It might not have been a total necessity before, but today it is. So that would be number one. But when I look at developing solutions, processes, whatever it is, you have to think, is it scalable, right? So yeah, this might work here. I've got this beautiful spreadsheet on my desktop. It's perfect. All I have to do is enter a part number, a tariff code. I've got all this information. Well, that works for you and that works for that specific business, but that probably doesn't work for the whole organization. For one, it's not shared, it's not visible to everybody else. And can you really replicate it? So especially if you have a smaller budget, everything, headcounts, things like that, there's always constraints, right? There's always pressures to adding headcounts. So when you put these solutions in place, scalability for me is number one. Because if you have a good scalable solution, then you're going to minimize headcount requirements. You're going to be much more efficient and productive. And with that comes a high level of compliance too. So that's number one.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's funny. A lot of the clients that I talk to, or just people in the industry, they've had this spreadsheet that works for years, and then their business does what they want it to, right? It grows. They have new products like that. That's everybody's goal, is to grow their business, and some people are finding themselves, in my opinion, to be quite stuck where the business has grown, they've found some success, and at the same time, the compliance landscape is just changing so rapidly that they're almost in a situation where they're caught a little bit flat-footed, where they've had this process that works, this spreadsheet that works, whatever it may be. It's all running through one person instead of a department, or it's outsourced or whatever it may be. And as their business grows, the world around them is also changing so quickly, and they need help immediately, which we've already established is, not unattainable, but it's a little bit easier said than done. And before we wrap up, Jenifer, I want to ask you a question, and you mentioned it. You mentioned it earlier, and I think it's a really interesting perspective, and really one, whenever you think about the Ray Groves article that we mentioned at the beginning about kind of offense being the best defense. What advantages do you see people, that are able to automate this, being able to take? Are there opportunities in this um, tumultuous landscape for global companies to actually take advantage of their infrastructure from a trade compliance perspective, where it's not just a defense mechanism to remain in compliance, but it can actually be a competitive advantage? Do you have any thoughts or any experience with that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I do think, when this all kind of first came about, everybody was kind of, trying to understand what was going on and looking towards the future. And I think we were in survival mode. And I think now, as I'm talking to folks, we're moving into more of a period of like, okay, this is the current landscape. This is just how it's going to be. How can I actually strategize to get my company ahead? I was reading an article earlier this week that was talking about, right, with the tariffs, you can kind of compare auto manufacturers based on where they manufacture, if they import components versus manufacture a finished good. The way that the tariffs are structured, it can provide you some indirect competitive advantage just based on how you're structured today. But with that, and that's true, right? Without doing anything, you kind of have that advantage there. But for folks that have their business built in a way that's scalable, you have your data there, you can make these quick pivots, you're flexible in terms of your operation decisions, you can change suppliers, you can look at different markets, you know how to leverage free trade agreements, right? You have some foreign trade zones and you know how to leverage that. That gives you a huge advantage because you can make changes to how you operate as a business to get that competitive advantage that you see. Now, I mean, everybody's kind of in the same boat, right? The tariffs that we've seen generally, right, are at a country level, or they're at an HS level, product level. You can still use that to your advantage while everybody's in the same boat. So for sure, it can absolutely be used as a strategic advantage. And folks need to start thinking that way, right? It's not just, all right, let me understand, let me report correctly, make sure that I'm in compliance. Now, what can I do on top of that to get ahead of my competitors? And I'm definitely seeing, as I'm talking to folks, that's kind of the thought process forward for folks who've survived quite well. They have the automation in place, they understand the regulations, they kind of know what's going on now. They really are looking towards that. So for sure, it's a really great point.
Yeah, and I think in this, in the general sentiment towards this topic, it's kind of fun to think about the other perspective where it can be an advantage, it can be a benefit. In a world where some of these tariffs are resulting in cost going up, certain manufacturers and businesses can have strategies in place where maybe they don't have to raise their prices. Maybe they gain competitive advantage by being able to insulate themselves from certain aspects of the tariffs. And then therefore, their competition is raising prices and making it more challenging for the consumer to buy it. And they look like rock stars because they're not raising their prices. And it really does paint their business in a very positive light. Um, and just as we wrap up, I want to say thanks to both Jenifer and Ryan for joining here. As everybody knows, as we've well established in this conversation, this industry is exceptionally busy. Everybody's under a lot of stress and pressure, and just dealing with the next day, right? The next hour in front of them, and the fact that they were able to take some time out of their very busy and eventful schedules really means a lot. And for all of you that are tuning in, thank you all for tuning in to today's episode of the Clarity Podcast. We appreciate your interest and engagement as we navigate this complex and ever-changing landscape of international trade. We hope this discussion has provided you with a deeper understanding of the current dynamics and the challenges and opportunities that businesses face. Be sure to join us for our next episode. But until next time, take care and keep striving for a better understanding of the world's economic interactions.
Thank you, Jenifer, Ryan, and Will, for your insights. I don't think we're done seeing changes in the tariff world, to be sure. And that means that as tax teams develop their strategy, it should always be forward-looking rather than simply responding to the latest action. Here, flexibility and speed is key, and technology is what will help us all get there. Thank you as always for joining us for Clarity, powered by the Thomson Reuters Institute. You can follow or subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and don't forget to share with your colleagues and leave a 5-star review. For more data-driven analysis of today's professional services market and in-depth conversations with industry thought leaders, please visit us online at thomsonreuters.com/institute and follow us on LinkedIn under the Thomson Reuters Institute. Clarity is a production of Thomson Reuters, copyright Thomson Reuters 2025.